Hello CraftDee Family, and welcome to another tutorial by She's So Crafty. For today's DIY projects, I've selected my top 10 most popular creations that are made with cheap cuts of wood. Now these projects all include step-by-step instructions and styling ideas that I've used for my space. Now as always, all of the projects I create have complete supply lists included in the description box, so you can easily use it for reference as you gather your supplies. Now just a side note, these videos were selected from creations over the last several months, so some of the pricing mentioned in the videos may have changed. But rest assured, none of these projects will cost more than $15 today if you use the items listed. Just be sure to check what the pricing will be in your region. Now before we start, I have to say hey to all of my subscribers, and if you are a new visitor to my channel today, I hope you consider subscribing as well and stick around to enjoy these crafts and all of the different ways that I'll show you how to style them in your space. So now, let's jump right into the projects. This project will need one of the 1x2 by 8 foot wood pieces from the Home Depot for $1.18, and I'm showing you the end piece for reference. We'll also need 4 packs of the 1 gallon paint sticks from Lowe's for 98 cents. And we'll also need one 7/16 inch dowel that was 97 cents from Walmart. Now the first thing we're going to do is cut the wood down to size. We're going to need 4 pieces that are going to be cut at 17 inches and 4 pieces cut at 7 inches. Now if you don't have a means to cut the wood, the Home Depot should be able to do this for you at no charge. Now I just replaced my table covering, so I'll be protecting it from hot glue with this silicone mat that the Surebonder company sent me. Now this mat is perfect to use when you're hot gluing your projects, and it also has a ruler grid on the side, which is very helpful, and I love that the glue won't stick to the mat and it peels right off. So I'll be using my Surebonder dual temp glue gun with my wood glue sticks for this project. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start by taking 2 of the longer wood pieces, and we're going to take 2 of the shorter ones, and we're going to form a frame by sandwiching the shorter pieces in between the longer ones. Just start by applying your hot glue to the end of one of the shorter pieces and adhere it to the longer piece as shown here, and you want to do this on both sides. And then you just finally want to apply the other long piece to the other end. Now once everything cools down, we have one of our frames, and now we're just going to repeat this for our other frame. And here they both are, all assembled. Now to reinforce our frames, I'm going to be drilling some pilot holes for screws, and I'm going to be using a 7/64 inch drill bit. I'm just going to drill a hole in each outside corner of both of the frames. And now that our pilot holes are ready, we're going to need 8 of the number 6 1.5 inch wood screws for the frames. And then I'm just going to carefully apply 1 screw into each one of those pilot holes we drilled. And now both of our frames are nice and sturdy. So now we're going to go ahead and grab our paint sticks and want to lay them on top of one of the frames. Now we want to mark a measurement where the sticks will fit inside of the frame nice and snug. Now what I suggest is taping them all together and cutting them down just a little bit at a time until you get the correct nice snug fit. And here is the fit that we are going for. Nice and snug inside the frame. So now we can start to add our slats from the back side. Now you want to make sure that you add them in the right direction and that the printed side is facing you since it is the back. And all we're going to do is use a marker for spacing, and I'm just going to put a dot of hot glue on top of that piece, check to see the fit, and then if everything fits okay, go ahead and secure it with a line of hot glue. Then I'm going to grab that marker again for the next slat, and then I just want to place that piece and tilt it at the same angle as the first. And then just apply some hot glue to the side seams of that slat. Again, check the front, make any adjustments to make sure it's all good to go. Now once we add that third slat, this should establish the nice spacing pattern that'll be easy to follow from now on. Then you just want to repeat this for the rest of the shutter. Now another great tip is to use a grid mat, and this will make sure that your slats are nice and straight. And here is the shutter all complete. Now you just want to repeat the process for that second shutter. So now that they're both complete, I'm going to be painting these white, but you could stain or paint any color that you wish. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a coat of this Zinsser primer, and this is nice and thick and will get into all those creases of the shutters. And now that the primer is dry, I really love how they're looking, but I decided to place on a center rod that is common in these types of shutters. So I'm just going to take that dowel rod and I'm going to mark the rod to fit in between the top, inside, bottom, and top of the frame. Now once you make these marks, you're just going to cut it into 2 pieces and fit them on the centers of the frames. Now to make sure that they're perfectly centered, go ahead and grab your measuring tape and you want to mark the center of the top and bottom of the frame. And then before you adhere it, just lay your ruler down as a guide, and then you can apply a dot of hot glue on top of each one of the slats all the way down the center. Now you want to do this fairly quickly so your glue does not dry. And then just place your dowel right on top of that glue line. And then once that's done, repeat it for the other shutter. Now when both shutters are done, you're just going to quickly paint that rod with some acrylic paint, and you just want to make sure you apply a light coat. I could have spray painted it with my Zinsser again, but I didn't want to overcoat my shutters, so I'm just going to brush this on really quickly. Now you could have done this before you painted anything, but I wasn't sure I was going to use it, but once I decided to, I just wanted to go ahead and paint it. And then you're going to add a final coat of this Krylon satin finish spray paint, and now we are ready to embellish. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using this elephant gray spray paint, and what I'm going to do is add a little bit of distressing. So I'm going to take a fine tipped paintbrush and I'm going to start lightly applying the paint to the edges of the slats. And you want to add it to the frame and the center rod as well. And now I'm going to follow up using my chip brush, and I'm just going to dry brush on the smallest bit of paint, and I'm just going to put that around the shutter just to lightly enhance that weathered look. Now this will dry quickly, and you can add your seasonal decor to your shutters if you like. Now for fall, I will be using a couple of these cotton pine cone picks, one wheat bundle that I went ahead and split in half, and I'll also be using some buffalo check ribbon, all from the Dollar Tree. Now you want to start bundling your wheat pick with your cotton pick. Now to secure these together, you can use some floral tape, you can use wire, or anything you have on hand to make sure that these are nice and secure together. And then when you have it all wrapped, just go ahead and clip off the excess stem. Now to secure these to the shutter, we're simply going to use some jute twine, and I'm going to tie the bundle to the frame by just going through one of the slats and securing it around that center rod. And now you can just go ahead and clip off those tails. Now if you want to cover the tie, you want to add a little extra flair, just cut a piece of that buffalo check ribbon, and all I'm going to do is wrap this around the entire shutter, and I'm going to tie a bow over the center, making sure I cover up that jute string tie. Then all you have to do is trim off the tails of your bow and then adjust the bow to the fullness that you like. And now you can repeat this on your other shutter. And here they are, both completed. Now they will look great without any embellishing, but decorating is all up to you. And here's our project, all hanging up on display. Now I think that these shutters turned out amazing. Now this size shutter is perfect for a bath or other small wall space, but it can be made even larger for a bolder statement. And I love how you can customize and change out the embellishments for any season that you like. Now here is my inspiration piece for this project today. Now this cute bench kept popping up in my feed, so I knew that there had to be a reason. So of course I just had to recreate it, and since the $129 price tag was definitely out of the question, I went off to the drafting board and I designed my own version. Now I will be showing you all of the measurement cuts and step-by-step assembly of this project. Now for this project we'll need 3 packs of the 5-gallon paint stir sticks from the Home Depot for 98 cents. And we'll need 3 of the 1x2 pieces of wood, and now these come in lengths of 8 feet and are very inexpensive at only $1.54 each at Home Depot. Now the first thing we're going to do is work with those paint stir sticks, and I will be cutting these at different lengths. So we're going to take 3 sticks and leave them at the length in the package, and they're packaged at 21 inches. And then I'm going to take 2 stir sticks and cut them down to 20 inches. 2 stir sticks are going to be cut down to 19 inches, and the last 2 will be cut at 18 inches. So I'm going to lay out my grid mat as a guide, and I'm going to grab one of those paint stir sticks. Now they measure about 21 inches long, so I'm going to mark that 21 inch mark with a piece of painter's tape on my mat. So once we have that, I'm going to grab 2 of those 18-inch sticks, and I want to place one at the very end at the 21 inches and at the very beginning at the 1-inch mark. Now in order to keep these in place, I'm just going to roll up a piece of painter's tape and put it on the back of each stick just to hold it right there in their place. And now I want to grab one of those 21-inch sticks, and we want to put this right in the center between those 2 18-inch sticks, and this will end up being around the 10-inch mark. So now I'm going to grab 2 more sticks, and this is the 19 and 20 inch sticks, and I want to center them between that 21 inch and 18 inch stick and then tape them down into place, and then grab the last 2 and do the same thing. So now all of my pieces are nice and secure and in place. So I'm going to grab those 2 last paint sticks that are the 21 inches, and I'm going to place one near the top and place one about 2 inches above the bottom. Now once they're at their desired location, I'm going to go ahead and mark the bottom of the stick across all of the sticks because I'll be taking it up to add some glue. Now you want to do this at the top and at the bottom. And I'll be using my Surebonder wood stick hot glue, and I'm just going to put a dab of hot glue right on those paint sticks above the mark that we made. And then place that paint stick right on top of that and press it firmly into place. Now we're going to repeat the same thing at the bottom as well. Now once that glue dries, you could take up your paint sticks and you'll see everything is all assembled and ready to go. Now to secure it, I'm going to add a staple in the back of each one of those paint sticks going through to the other stick across the top and the bottom, and this will be sure to keep everything nice and secure together. So now we're going to start working on our wood box. So I'm going to take my 1x2s. I'm going to cut 7 pieces at 19.5 inches. I'm going to cut 4 pieces at 10.5 inches. I'm going to cut 4 pieces at 7.5 inches. I'll cut 2 pieces at 5.5 inches and 4 pieces at 3 inches. Now we're going to go ahead and stain our wood, and I put 4 sticks here, but we're going to need 5 sticks at 19.5 and 4 sticks at 7.5 inches. Now I'll be using my Jacobian stain by Minwax to stain these. So when we stain these, we want to stain all of the sides, the front, back sides, and even the 2 ends, because they all will be showing in our project. And once that first one is stained, just go ahead and stain the remainder of them and then sit them out for 2.5 to 3 hours to completely dry. And here's that last one, I didn't forget. So now, while those dry, we're going to grab the last two 19.5-inch sticks and 2 of the 5.5-inch sticks. Now these are going to be for our box to hold our seat. So we're just going to lay the 2 long sticks out first and then sandwich those 5.5-inch pieces in between them to make the box. Now again, I'm going to take my Surebonder wood stick hot glue and I'm going to place it on the end of each one of those short sticks and then bond them to the top of that long stick. Now this will be a temporary bond for the box because we will be screwing this in place to make sure it holds up well. Just add 2 more dabs of that hot glue right on those ends there and press those into place. So once those are nice and secure and that glue has set, we are going to be screwing these together. So I'm going to grab 4 1.25-inch wood screws from my box. Now I've got a lot of questions come in about my box and I actually put this together myself. This is like one of those clear sorter box tackle boxes from the fishing section like at a Walmart, and I just grabbed individual packets of screws that I use often and placed them in here and then put little sticky labels in here labeling each one of the sizes, and it has come in so handy, and I just wanted to share that with you since I had a lot of questions. So now we're going to take our drill and I want to drill pilot holes for these screws. Now we want to drill these holes closer to that bottom edge of the box, about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little bit more, maybe a 1/2 inch just near the bottom. And we're going to put one of those screws in and screw it into place. And we want to do this all the way around that box. And now you see all of the screws are in place near the bottom edge of the box. So now we're going to grab 4 of those 10.5-inch pieces, and these are going to be the legs of our bench. So I'm just going to stack them all nice and even, making sure that edge is even, and grab my ruler. Now what we want to do is measure up from the bottom about to the 6-inch mark, and we want to draw a 6-inch line across the side of each one of those pieces. Now this line will be a guide on how we place it on our box. So we want that line that we drew to line up with the bottom edge of the box, and this will go all the way around on all 4 corners of this box. So now we're going to add a generous amount of that wood stick hot glue, and again we're going to place this into place, making sure that we line it up on that line that we drew, and this is one near the back. So we're going to repeat this for the other side, and we're going to glue that into place as well. Now once the 2 back ones are applied, just flip it over, and you want to do the 2 front ones as well and make sure they line up on that line. And here are all 4 of them hot glued into place. So now I'm going to apply 2 screws into each leg on the side. So I am going to drill a hole near the top and down near the bottom in an angle, and we just want to avoid screwing through the same area we screwed through for the first screw. We just want to screw right above it, and you can see how the angle is shown here. Now we're going to repeat this all the way around, and then take our screws and we are going to put those screws in the side of those legs. And here's what the screws will look like, and we're just going to continue this all the way around. And here are all of those screws into place. So now we're going to take our 4 3-inch pieces, and these are going to be armrest holders for our bench. And you can see we're just going to sit them right on top at the top of our legs at the very top of the bench. I'm just going to add a little bit more of that wood stick hot glue, and I'm going to place that wood rest piece right on top, making sure the inside edge is nice and flush. Now you do want to make sure that these are even as possible, and that hot glue should grab right onto it and hold it in place temporarily. Now once we do the other side, all 4 sides have those armrest holders on there, and we are good to go. So now I'm going to grab the back fence area for the bench and our front, and we're going to prime both of these with some Zinsser 123 primer, or you can use chalk paint if you choose to paint by hand. And then once it's all primed and dry, we can go ahead with our final coat, and I'm using some of this Krylon Satin White, or you can use another coat of chalk paint. So now our wood pieces are nice and dry, and what we're going to do is we're going to lay out all 5 of those 19.5-inch pieces all together as shown here. I'm going to use my carpenter square that I picked up from the Dollar Tree to kind of keep them nice and square. Now what I'm going to do is on the side of the piece, I'm just going to put several small dots of that hot glue along the side and press it against the next one. You don't want to put a very thick bead because you do not want it oozing through the seam. You just want to create that initial bond between the pieces, and then complete this for all 5 pieces. And here is the solid piece all together after gluing it at the seam. So we're going to repeat this for the armrest pieces as well. We're just going to put 2 of them together and then put a few beads of hot glue in between them and press them together as well. And now we have our 2 armrest pieces. So go ahead and set those to the side, and now our bench frame is nice and dry with that final coat. So the first thing we want to do is just to make sure our bench platform fits in between there, and if we cut everything right, it should fit nice and even. And when we do fit it, we're going to make sure the back of that bench platform is even with the back of the frame. So to initially adhere it, I'm going to run a nice generous bead of that wood hot glue along the top of that frame and sit that bench piece right on top. Now you want the back to be flush with the back panel, and the front will have a lip of about 1/2 inch overlapping. So as you can see here, the front part overlaps a little bit and all the sides are nice and even. Now once that's secure in place, we're going to work on those armrests, and all we're going to do is take our armrest piece and we are going to align it with the back and the sides of that armrest. So go ahead and apply a generous amount of that hot glue on top of that armrest piece and gently place that armrest piece right on top, and that will overlap in the front about 1/2 inch as well, but it'll be flush and even with the back. And then repeat this for the other side. And here is everything all bonded together and ready to be permanently secured. So now what we want to do is we are going to add 2 screws into that armrest, because as you recall, we only hot glued those armrest supports in. So I'm just going to drill straight down into that leg portion and through the armrest support all the way down into that wood. We're going to make 2 screw holes. And then we're going to take some 2-inch wood screws and we are going to secure these together. And I'm choosing longer screws because it does have to go through the armrest, through the support, and into the leg. And that'll ensure that these armrests will not be budging. And now you want to repeat this for the other side. Now, even though that seat does sit on a frame and shouldn't budge, that front piece does overlap. So just to secure that one in place, I am also going to drill a pilot hole in the upper corner of the front piece on each side. And then I'm going to be putting in some 1-inch wood screws in each side just to hold that in place. Now, you certainly could put a wood screw in each one of the planks, but I think for the purpose of displaying and decor items, there really isn't no need, and the hot glue should hold it perfectly. So now I'm going to flip it upside down, and just for reassurance, I am taking that wood stick hot glue and I'm running a bead along the inside bottom of the frame all the way around the bottom bench and also underneath those armrests. So this should lock it into place. The wood stick hot glue is much stronger than regular hot glue. So now those wood screws are showing, so I like to cover them up with a little acrylic. So I'm mixing some nutmeg brown and some black, and I'm just going to dab it on the inside and around that screw head in a color that closely matches the stain. I like to let it dry and then dab a second coat on top when that dries, and that should hold up pretty well throughout the life of the project. So now that the back of the bench is nice and dry, we can start working with that and attach it. So now that our bench is done, we can sit the bench with the back side down against it and just make sure everything lines up. And if your measurements were cut right, everything should be even. So you want to flip it with the face side down, the good side down, and have the back facing you for the bench. And we're going to run a bead of hot glue along the back of each leg. So I'm going to take that wood stick wood hot glue and I'm going to run a bead down both of the legs, making sure you use a generous amount, and then place that fence piece right on top. Now both sides should be even with the width of the bench, and you want to make sure the bottom is even with the bottom of that leg as well, and just press it firmly into place. And it's now secured to the bench, and to make it permanent we are going to put 2 screws in the back along the side. So I'm going to take my drill and I'm going to drill 2 pilot holes, one near the top near the armrest and one near the bottom. And then I'm going to take some 3/4 inch wood screws and I'm going to put a wood screw in each one of those pilot holes. These don't have to be as long since it's only going through a wood stick into that 1x2 piece of wood. So here are both screws into place, and you want to repeat this on the other side. Now once those screws are into place, everything is put together on your bench. You just flip it over. You want to check for glue webs and any kind of sawdust, clean it up, and now you are ready to put it on display. Now here is the fully assembled bench completed. Oh my goodness, how amazing does this look? Now these inexpensive cuts of wood always take stain beautifully, and it turned out great. And the thicker 5-gallon paint stir sticks were the perfect shape for the backing. Now the armrests were a perfect accent and they match the bench perfectly. And now I've added a few of my favorite spring decor items, and it brings the entire look together. Now we're going to start with 3 of these metal planters from the Dollar Tree. Now what I'm going to do with these planters is I'm going to drill a hole on each side to hold a piece of jute twine. So we're going to line that hole up on each side, making sure that center seam is down the back. So here I'm just taking a Sharpie and I'm going to mark where I want to drill my side holes. Now you want to just choose a drill bit that is big enough to run your jute twine through. Now I'm just going to go about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch below my marking to drill the hole through the metal. Now once that first hole is drilled, you want to repeat this on the other side. And now we're going to repeat this process for your other 2 containers until all 3 have the 2 holes to hang your pots. So now I'm going to use some of this jute twine from the Crafter Square in the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to cut 3 long pieces. Now I'm going to take one of those pieces and I am going to thread it from the outside in, and what I'm going to do is I'll be hanging these, and I need to adjust the rope when my frame is made, but for now I'm just going to put a very loose knot on the inside just to have that string held into place. And I'm going to repeat this for the other 2 pots. And once they're done, just sit those over to the side. So now we're going to work on the frame, and I'm going to be using some 1x4s from the Home Depot. Now these 1x4s are furring strips from the Home Depot, and they're really reasonably priced for $2.98 for an 8 feet long piece. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut that piece down into 4 pieces measuring 23 inches each, and the Home Depot should be able to cut this for you. Now we're going to take those 4 pieces and we are going to lay them out into a square, and we just want to make sure the edge that we want exposed on the front of our shelf is facing up. Now to bond these, I'm going to be using my Sure Bonder glue gun with these hot glue sticks. Now this will only hold for temporary purposes because I will be using screws to permanently secure these into place. So I'm just going to apply some of that Sure Bonder wood glue, hot glue into the edge, and then I'm going to press them together. And I'm going to go ahead and repeat this all the way around the frame, making sure I use a generous amount of that wood glue to just hold it into place. And here are all 4 corners secured into place. Now, I did mention that I will be screwing this together to make sure it's sturdy, and I'll be using some of these number 6 1 3/4 wood screws. Now, to secure my screws in, I'm first going to go ahead and drill a pilot hole, and I'm going to drill 2 pilot holes into each corner. Now, once all of my pilot holes are drilled into each corner, I can apply my screws. So I'm just going to take a screw, and I'm going to start by hand threading it in, and then taking my drill and screwing it all the way into the wood piece until it's flush. And here are both of my wood screws all secured into place. Now you want to repeat this all the way around the frame until it's all finished. So now what we're going to do is paint our frame, and I'm going to start by using this elephant gray acrylic paint, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply it like a wash. So what I'm going to do is take my chip brush, and I'm going to heavily saturate it in water, and then I'm just going to dab some of that elephant gray acrylic paint, and I just want to wash it onto the wood. Now it doesn't really have to be neat because this will be an underlayment color. Now you want to repeat this process all the way around the frame, on the outside, the edge, and the inside of the frame, and this is what it will look like once it's all covered. Now once that frame is all nice and dry, you can move on to the next step, which is using some candles to rub it all over the surface. Now these are just some Dollar Tree taper candles, and you just want to rub it all over your painted surfaces. And now that wax is all over the surfaces, and this will provide the perfect base to do some of our distressing. Now to cover up that waxy coating, I'm going to use some of this white acrylic paint to cover it up, and I'm just going to put one nice coat over it. You could also use chalk paint, but acrylic paint is so inexpensive, I thought I would go ahead and use this and it will achieve the same look. And here is my frame all coated in white and completely dried. So now what we're going to do is figure out how we want to hang our planters, and there's a couple of different ways you can do this. So an easy way is just to take that jute string from your pots and just loop it around the top and let it hang that way, and that would be a very super easy way to do it. Now you could also take your drill and you can drill 3 holes in the top of your frame to actually tie your jute string through, and that's another alternative. Now the method that I'm going to choose are these screw hooks, and I just had these on hand, but they're available at any hardware store or even Walmart, and they're really inexpensive. They have a screw in, and the good thing is you don't have to use pilot holes to put these in. So to install these, I'm just going to find out the center of the top of my frame and make a mark there. Then I'm going to take one of those screw hooks in the middle of the top of the frame on the inside and just screw it into place. And then for the next hook, I am just going to kind of eyeball it near the edge, the other end, and then I'm just going to screw that into place as well. Now to make sure that the last hook that you put in is equal distance from the edge as the other one on the end, I'm just transferring that measurement over to the other side, and I'm going to screw in that third hook. Now the screws on these are short enough where they won't go through the top side, but you always want to check. So now what you do is just go ahead and take your pots, and you can use that string now to adjust the length of the pots that you want them to hang. And this is a reason why I didn't tie it off immediately. I left it really loose so you could just do any kind of adjustments that you like. Now once they are adjusted to the length that you do like, I'm just going to take that string on the inside and just tie it in a knot across the middle. You can cut it and tie knots on each side, but I found this to be easier in case I wanted to make any adjustments in the future. Now I didn't like the color of my hooks. I kind of wanted them to blend in. So I'm just going to dab them with some of this white acrylic paint and let them dry. Now I did want to add shelves to my unit, so I have a second 1x4 and then I cut into 2 pieces, and I wanted to cut them at 22 3/4 inches so they will fit snugly inside the frame. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint these and distress them the same way I did as my original frame. So now I'm going to take my tape measure and I'm going to measure and divide the space into about 7 inches, since it's just a little bit over 21 inches opening. So I'm making a mark at 7 inches and one at 14 inches. So then I'm just going to go ahead, and I did draw a line where those markings were, so I'll know where my shelves will sit. Now, just to make sure that they fit to my liking and they look like the way I wanted them to, I'm just going to just stick my shelves in there, take a look, and everything looks good. Now, you can put your shelves a few ways. You can use these commercial style shelf supports here. You can actually use some cut dowels from the Dollar Tree, and you can cut them down to support those shelves as well. Now what I'm going to be using are shelf pins. I have a ton of these on hand, so I'm just going to be using these shelf pins to support my shelves in this project, and I'll link those in the description box as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a drill bit the size of your shelf pin's base, and you're going to carefully drill holes right underneath that line that you drew. You want to make sure you go in about a 1/2 inch, and just do this slowly. You do want to make sure you don't go through the other side. And here are my 2 holes for the shelf pins. Now I'm just sticking those in right now just to test them out before I continue to drill the remainder of my shelf pins and make sure everything is okay. So now that everything is all drilled and ready to go, we can actually start distressing our frame. I like to save this for last because it's so much fun. So I'm just taking Dollar Tree putty knife, and I'm just scraping along that painted surface, and you'll see that that beautiful gray color is coming through when you scrape it. I just love the way that this looks. It looks like a natural distressing, a little bit of weathered and aged look. And here are both shelves fully distressed. Now once that's done, we can go ahead and distress our frame as well. Again, just lightly scrape it with your putty knife, and you can do as little or as much distressing as you like. You just want to continue it until you are happy. And so here is my frame all distressed on the inside and out, just scraping away that paint. So now I'm just going to put my shelf pins in, and I'm going to test out my shelves and see how everything looks. And it looks like everything is okay. So to hang our shelf, all we're going to use are these sawtooth hangers. I believe I got these in a kit from the Dollar Tree, and these attach with 2 nails. So I'm just going to place one of the sawtooth hangers in near one of the corners, and I'm going to use these tiny nails to nail them in. They're about 1 inch long, and I like to use needle nose pliers to hold them so I don't bang up my fingers. So I'm just going to nail those in and put 1 nail in each end. And here is what the hanger will look like. And so now you're just going to repeat the process on the other end until both of those sawtooth hangers are in place. So now all you have to do is assemble everything together and choose how you want to display them. Now I chose to use some of this Boxwood and some of this Dollar Tree Wildflower for my pots, but you could use whatever you like. And here is that rustic frame with the metal planters on display. Oh my goodness, I just think that this is just so adorable. Now I love the way that the staggered pots look in the frame and how you're able to adjust them if you need to. And I think that the distressed wood look of the wood is so great. Now I added a little buffalo check ribbon to the pots too, and you could customize them however you like. And you all know I just couldn't stop there. I added a few shelves to the piece and changed up the look. So now you can style these with all of your favorite trinkets to match your own home decor and style. Now here is my inspiration for this project today. Now I thought that this item was absolutely beautiful, but I didn't want to pay $69 for it. So I decided to create my own version, and I grabbed a few supplies from the Dollar Tree and cheap wood for the frame to make it come to life. Now for this project, we will need one 1x2 piece of wood, and these come in lengths of 8 feet and are very inexpensive at only $1.54 each at the Home Depot. We'll also need some of these 32-inch skewers that I got from the Dollar Tree, and just know that these are also available at Walmart for 88 cents under the Ozark Trail brand. And we'll also need a piece of black poster board from the Dollar Tree. Now the first thing we want to do is have the wood cut to size, and we're going to cut 2 long pieces at 33 inches. And we're also going to cut 2 short pieces, and these will be cut at 6 inches. And now that all of our wood pieces are cut, we will be staining these, and this time I will be using some early American stain to stain my pieces. Now I usually use my Jacobian stain, which I love, but in order to match my inspiration project, I am using this early American stain. So I'm going to stain the sides and the front of both of the small pieces, making sure you don't stain the back or the end pieces. Now for the 2 longer pieces, we do want to stain the ends of these and also the front and sides as well, and then sit them out to completely dry. So while those dry, we're going to work on our skewers. So I just grabbed a handful from the package, and I'll be using this black acrylic paint to paint my skewers. Now you can use whatever method you like to paint the skewers. I'm just using one of these paint brushes from the Dollar Tree, and I want to make sure I cover the entire skewer with the paint except the pointy end in which you're holding while you are painting them. And here's one of the skewers completely painted, and just repeat this process for the remainder of your skewers. And here they are, sit out and just let them dry completely. And now that they're dry, here they are. Now we're only going to end up using about 3 or 4 of these, but I like to paint a bunch of them for future projects and do it all at the same time. So now we're going to work on our poster board, and what we're going to do is we're going to be cutting this into 1-inch strips. So in order to keep our board from shifting, we're going to go ahead and tape it in place with some painter's tape. Now I have one of these yardsticks from Lowe's that I'm going to use to keep my lines nice and even, and I'm going to use my X-Acto knife to cut my 1-inch strips. Just be careful cutting with this. The X-Acto knife is very sharp, and try to keep it as vertical as possible to make your lines nice and crisp. Now what you want to do is you want to cut out 20 of these 1-inch strips along the short side of your poster board, and here are all of mine ready to go. Now what we're going to do with each one of our strips is we are going to mark them at 4.5 inches with an embossing tool, and what this does is create a fold line so everything is nice and even. So I'm just going to take my ruler, I'm going to go to the 4.5 inch line and make an embossing line at 4.5 inches until you have 4 4.5 inch sections on that strip. Now once you do have your 4 4.5 inches sections on there, these will create fold lines, so you'll see that it's easy to fold now. Now we're going to fold that until we have 4 layers, and then for that extra piece that's left over, we're going to cut that down to about 1/4 inch, and that will be at the end that we're going to seal it on. So we're going to fold it over once, and then grab our hot glue and run a strip of hot glue on that piece, and then fold that down on that 3rd section. You want to make sure it's nice and even, add some more hot glue on that section, and then fold that 4th layer right on top. And now all you have to do is secure that little tab in place at the bottom and hot glue. Now you can use hot glue or a glue stick, use whatever you feel comfortable with. And as you see, it creates this double layer flower petal kind of situation here. And we want to repeat this for the remainder of our strips until they are all completed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my black acrylic paint and I'm going to be painting the edges of my board, because as you see, when you cut them, it exposes that white underneath the black layer. So I'm just going to apply some of that black acrylic paint on each one of the ends where I cut my flower petals out, and then let them sit out to completely dry. And here are all of my petals, all nice and painted and dried and ready to go. So by this time the wood should be nice and dry, and we are going to grab all of our pieces. So we're going to start with using one long piece and one short piece, and we're going to start assembling our frame. I'm going to place one of the shorter pieces along the top edge of that longer piece, and I'm going to be using my Sure Bonder wood stick hot glue just to temporarily hold it in place, because I will be screwing my frame together. So I'm going to apply one of those pieces to one side, and then I'm going to take another one of those shorter pieces and apply it to the other side as well. Now once those two pieces dry, we're going to take that last longer piece and place it right on top of those two short pieces. So this will form our long frame. Now just apply the Sure Bonder wood stick hot glue on both of those ends as well, and then put that longer piece on top of the shorter piece. Now here is our frame all held together by that wood stick hot glue. Now I did mention earlier that I was going to secure these with screws, so I'm going to be using some number 8 1.5 inch wood screws to secure the frame together. Now before I add my screws, I always love to drill pilot holes, and what this does is prevent your wood from splitting or becoming weakened at those points. So I'm just going to take my drill and I'm going to drill a pilot hole in the top of the frame, making sure you go through both layers, and you want to do this on all 4 of your corners of your frame. Then once that is done, you want to put your drill bit in to adhere your screws, and I'm just starting by hand screwing it in and then securing the rest in place with my drill. And you want to repeat this for all 4 corners as well. So as you can see, the color of my screw is showing through on my frame, and I like to blend those in, so I'm using a combination of this nutmeg brown and this golden yellow, and I'm going to mix them together until I get a color similar to my stain color on my frame. Now once you achieve that color that you're comfortable with, go ahead and apply it to the top and inside of each screw with a fine tipped paintbrush, and just make sure it blends in well. So now what we're going to do is we're going to flip our frame over to the back side, and we're going to mark the center of the top of the frame, and along the sides we are going to be marking 3-inch sections all the way down. And if your measurements are right and you cut the wood correctly to size, these should be equally 3 inches apart. And I'm just going over my marks with my Sharpie just to make sure I can see them just a little better. So now what we're going to do with each one of our marks is we are going to be laying one of our skewers across each one of those marks. So I'm going to take one of my skewers, I'm going to lay it across the marks, and then I'm going to cut it where it overlaps at least a 1/2 inch on each side, and I'm using my wire clippers to cut it. Now once it fits pretty good, I'm going to take that wood stick glue gun and apply some glue on each one of those marks that I made, and I'm going to be placing my skewer right on top. Now you want to cut and repeat this process all the way down your frame until you have all your skewers in place. And here is what all the skewers secured in place will look like. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take one long full skewer and we are going to flip it over to the front. We're going to nestle the top edge and bottom edge underneath the bottoms of the frames, making sure the top of the skewer is on top of those ones you placed before, and then place some hot glue on each end just to make sure that it is nice and secure in place. And then you're going to add a little dab of hot glue at every couple of skewers down the middle. And I like to use these Dollar Tree clips to hold it in place, and this will just keep the middle of the skewer from shifting out of place. So now we can grab our flower petals and start putting them in place. So since they are larger than that 3-inch space, all you have to do is just kind of squeeze them until they come open, just like shown here, and fit them and nestle them into each one of the squares. Now I'm forming a flower where 4 petals will meet in the middle, and this is what 4 petals will look like when you put one set into place. And as you can see, they do hold in place while you're working, and so you want to continue this all the way down the frame until you have 5 sets of the petals. And here's what the frame will look like with all of those petals just holding into place. Now to permanently secure those in place, I'm going to use my hot glue and I'm going to place a generous amount in between the center of each one of those flower petals, just making sure that glue touches the outside of each one of those petals. And then on the outside edges, I'm running a bead of hot glue along the poster board and the frame. Now the poster board will protrude further out than the frame, so there should be a line where you can put a bead of glue there to hold everything securely in place. And then finally, I'm just taking my Dollar Tree broom and I'm removing all of those hot glue webs around my frame. You want to make sure you do this on the front and the back. Now to hang our piece, I'm just taking a piece of jute twine and I tied knots on each end, and I'm just going to secure these in place on each end with a couple of staples with my staple gun. And now this is ready to hang. And here is the final project on display. Now I am so blown away on how easy this was to create. Now I think that these petals and skewers really look like iron or metal, and they absolutely turned out amazing. Now combined with the rich wood color, I think these are perfect, and you can make one, a pair, or even multiples to connect together and display with hinges for a divider design. You guys have to let me know how you would display these in your space. Now here is my inspiration for this project today. Now this shelving piece caught my eye with the beautiful wood slat assembly and that warm and cozy look. Now I had been looking for a shelf for my bath, so I decided to recreate this since I didn't want to pay that hefty $124 price tag. Now I designed my own version to fit the items I wanted to display, and I'll be showing you all of the measurements and step-by-step assembly for this project. Now we're going to need 5 of these 1x2s from the Home Depot, and they are really inexpensive at only $1.54 each. And we'll also need 1 plunger from the Dollar Tree. Now we're going to cut our wood, and we'll need 8 pieces, and we're going to cut these at 23.5 inches. We're also going to cut 12 pieces, and these are going to be cut at 15 inches. And we're going to cut 4 pieces at 6 inches. Now as an alternative, you can use a 1x6, and you can cut 2 pieces at 23.5 inches, and you can cut 3 pieces at 15 inches, and you'll also need to cut 4 1x2 pieces at 6 inches. Now this version is about $3 more, and it's slightly smaller shelves than the first version, but it has less cuts. So now we're going to move on to stain. I'm going to be staining with my Jacobian Minwax stain, and you can also paint, but I wouldn't paint until the shelf is fully assembled. So I'm going to start staining my pieces, and you want to stain the entire wood piece, including the front, back, sides, and also both of the ends. And then you want to check each piece, make sure it's fully stained and ready to go, and continue to stain the rest of those 6-inch pieces. So now we're going to move on to those next pieces, and we're going to stain all of those as well. Now these are all of my 15-inch pieces, and they are all stained and good to go. And then finally, we are going to stain our 23.5-inch pieces as well. Now, and don't forget, we are going to stain our plunger handle, so remove that and the tag and stain that as well. Now you want to let these completely dry. Now once they are dry, we're going to start working with those 23.5-inch wood pieces. We're going to separate out 4 of these, and each one of these 4-piece sections will be the side of our cabinet. So we want to stack them on top of each other, and we're going to make sure they're even by using this carpenter square that I got from the Dollar Tree. Now once they are nice and even, I'm going to take my hot glue gun and I'm going to be using my SureBonder wood stick glue sticks. I'm going to be bonding each one of these in between them, just placing a dot every 2 or 3 inches along the side and pressing the pieces together. Now this is going to be my temporary bond to hold these together while I work, and you can use wood glue, but it does take a little bit more time, but it's completely up to you. So you're going to continue to add the dots of that wood stick hot glue in between the pieces, pressing them together as you go, and making sure those ends are nice and even. Now you don't want to use a whole lot of wood glue here because you do not want it seeping out through the seams. So once that glue is bonded within about 10 seconds, you'll see you'll have this solid wood plank, and this will be one of your sides, and you want to repeat this for the other 4 pieces. And so now you have all 4 of your pieces together for both sides of your shelving unit. So now we're going to take those 6-inch pieces, and these will be bonded on the inside edge of the shelf, and we'll place 1 on each end as an accent. So again, I'm going to take my wood stick hot glue, I'm going to place a dot of that hot glue along the edge, and then line up that 6-inch piece along each one of the ends. And this is what one piece looks like with both pieces adhered, and we're just going to repeat this for that second piece. And now both of our side pieces are done with all of those extra end pieces. So now we're going to start to work on our 15-inch pieces. Now these pieces will be used for our shelves. Now each one of our shelves will have 4 pieces of the wood, so go ahead and separate them into groups of 4. Now we're going to take our first group of 4, and we are going to line them up just like we did the sides of our shelves. We're going to use our carpenter square to make sure they're even, and we are going to glue them in between just like we did before. And after being glued, this is what one of the shelves looks like, and just repeat this for the other 2 shelves. And now we have all 3 of our shelves ready to go. So now we're going to take our sides of our shelves, and we're going to determine the placement of each one of our shelves. So I'm going to take my tape measure, and I'm going to measure up 3 inches from the bottom edge, and I'm going to place a mark there. Now from that 3-inch mark, I'm going to measure out another 10 inches, and I'm going to place a mark at the 10-inch mark. Then on the opposite end of the shelf, I'm again going to measure in at 3 inches, and I'm going to make a mark there. So now we have all 3 of our marks in place. Now all I'm going to do is take my second piece, and I'm going to place it against it, and I'm just going to transfer those markings exactly where I made them, and this will make sure that everything stays nice and even. So now we are going to mark our line on the side of our shelves for our shelf placement. So I'm going to be using this painter's tape. Now I'm just going to run the painter's tape in between those marks, and I just want to make sure it is nice and even. You want to repeat this for your first 3-inch mark, your 10-inch mark, and also the 3-inch mark on the other side. So once all your tape is in place, double check those measurements. So I'm making sure that it's 3 inches from the bottom up to the edge of the tape at the bottom. The middle from each end of the tape to each end is 10 inches. And then at the end, from the end to the top of the tape is also 3 inches. Measure twice, you guys. So now you want to take your second piece and do the same thing. And you do want to make sure they're all lined up and nice and even. So now we are going to start screwing these together. So I am going to be using some 1 1/4 inch wood screws to secure the shelves together for this unit. So what I'm going to do is turn it over to the inside of the shelf, making note of where those tape marks are. Now I do want to just take the edge of my shelf and I want to line it up where the tape marks line up with the edge of the shelf. And to temporarily adhere it, I'm going to add a bead of that wood stick hot glue to the edge. And then I'm going to place it on the inner part of the shelf, making sure each end lines up with the tape on the opposite side. So then you want to take your two remaining shelves and line it up with the middle and the last shelves. So now that these are temporarily nice and bonded, we can actually start securing them into place. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this tape as a guide to add my screw holes. So I'm going to take my drill and I want to eyeball it and make sure that my drill is going directly into the wood plank. I'm going to drill a hole in each one of those planks going through to my shelf. Now once your holes are drilled, go ahead and remove that tape because you no longer need it, and we can start inserting our 1 1/4 inch wood screws into the side. And here's my shelf with all 4 of those wood screws into place. And now you just want to repeat this for the top and the bottom shelves as well. And now all our wood screws on one side are completely inserted into the shelf. And now that that side is nice and secure, go ahead and flip it over, and we are going to add the other side of the shelf the very same way. First of all, gluing into place, adding those pilot holes, and drilling those screws into place. And now both sides have those wood screws into place, and your shelf should be nice and secure. So now what we're going to do is go to the bottom of the shelf and we are going to add our towel bar. So I'm going to take my dowel and I want to measure the distance between those inside 6-inch wood planks to place it in. Now when you get that exact measurement, you cut just a little bit larger than that because you do want it to fit nice and snug in between. So I'm going to place this bar even with that second plank down, and it should fit snugly into place. Now once it's nice and snug, you can go ahead and start securing it permanently. So I'm going to drill a hole through the side of the shelf and make sure it goes all the way into the dowel. And then just take a 2-inch wood screw and we're going to insert this into the side, and we are inserting these, we're going to use a longer one here because it does have to go through a couple layers of wood to get to that dowel, and then repeat this on the other side. So now our dowel is nice and secure into place, and we can use this for our towels. Now to hang this, you can use some of these sawtooth hangers or you can use some of these D-ring hangers. I actually prefer the D-ring hangers. I think they are more for a heavy-duty application, and I think they do have a weight capacity of about 25-30 pounds, but you can choose whichever method that you like, and these just simply screw into place, and I'm just screwing them right above that top shelf. Now, if you want to hide your screws, I'm just going to take some of this chocolate brown acrylic paint and some of this black acrylic paint, and I'm going to mix and blend them together until I get a color close to my Jacobian stain. And then once my paint is all blended, I am just going to take a fine tipped paintbrush. I want to dab this on top of the screw hole and inside those grooves to make sure it's nice and covered. Now I do want to put 2 layers, making sure that it dries in between both layers. And once those are completely dry, you want to make sure you do this on both sides. And now you can decorate your shelf when it's all dry. And here is my shelving unit all hung up and decorated for my bathroom space. Now I just love how amazing this turned out. Now by adding a few accessories, this unit becomes such a great showpiece, and there's plenty of room for all of your necessities. Now for the taller shelf, I placed my tissue paper and vases. And the shorter one I used for my battery candle, washcloths, and more decor. And this top shelf was perfect for my labeled jars. Now I think that this white with the wood feels so spa-like to me, and I really love it. And even though this wood was so inexpensive, the stain really does bring out the beautiful texture. Now I think this would be a perfect guest or even main bathroom shelf, but you don't have to limit its use just to the bathroom. Now, how about making this into a coffee bar? Now, I absolutely love this idea for this shelf as well. Now, all you have to do is place all of your coffee or cocoa favorites on these shelves for a great one-stop coffee bar. Now I added some hanging baskets for my K-cups to the towel bar. I placed some mugs that are ready to go, and I added my condiments. And you can't forget the to-go cups when you're on the go. Now this is a great one-stop station to get your coffee or cocoa fix. Now you can also use this as a kitchen shelf as well to display a variety of ready-to-use items. Now I simply placed a couple of hand towels along with some dry goods in mason jars, and I also have a shelf with lots of seasonings and spices ready to grab. Now for the top, I just placed a few ramekins and some plant decor to top it all off. Now I think this is a great idea as well. Now if you need more space, you can also add another shelf to the top. All you have to do is cut 4 pieces of a 1x2 to 18.5 inches. And all you have to do after that is just stain and glue just like we did before, and now you have this solid top piece. Now you can sit this right on the top of the unit, or you can screw it in. It's your choice. For this project, we'll start with a pack of these long skewers from the Dollar Tree. We'll also need 1 10-pack of these 1-gallon paint stir sticks from Lowe's for 98 cents. We'll also need a 1x4x8 piece of wood from the Home Depot, and this one was $1.98. And we will also need a 1x2x8 piece of wood from the Home Depot for $1.18. And I'm only showing the sample end pieces of these because these are actually 8 feet long. Now the first thing we're going to do is cut the wood pieces to size, and we'll need 2 pieces cut to 30 inches. We'll need 3 pieces cut to 10 inches, and we'll also need 1 piece of the larger one cut to 12 3/4 inches. Now if you don't have a means to cut the wood, most Home Depot and Lowe's stores will do this for you at no charge. Now so for one version, we will be staining the wood, so gather up your pieces including your paint sticks. Now we'll be using my favorite Jacobian stain by Mimwax for this project. So when applying the stain, you want to stain the front and both sides of the wood. Now staining the back of these shorter pieces is actually optional, and you also want to make sure that you stain both ends as well, since they'll both be showing in the project. Now these cheap cuts really take stain well and have a great wood grain. Then we're just going to continue staining the remaining wood cuts, and then you want to stain also the front and back of the shelf piece and also those paint stir sticks. Just make sure you stain the side that does not have the measurements. Now once everything is nice and stained, just set it to the side to dry. Now while that's drying, we can start on our second painted version of this shelf, so gather up all of your pieces. Now we're going to go ahead and cut off the paint stick handle right above that curve. So I'm going to go ahead and lay out my grid mat so I can make sure that the alignment of my pieces are nice and even. So go ahead and place your 2 30-inch pieces horizontal, and you want to add those 3 10-inch pieces in between them. Now in order to place that middle piece right in place, just measure 10 inches from the bottom of that 30-inch piece and make a mark. And now just align the bottom of that centerpiece with the mark that you made. Now here, I'm just making a quick check to make sure those paint stir sticks will fit. Now to adhere these together, I will be using this wood glue from the Dollar Tree. Now this will allow you some working time to adjust the pieces if needed. You just start by applying some wood glue to the end of those short pieces and just apply them into place. And then for the longer side, just apply wood glue as well, and you want to attach it to complete the frame. Now to help with the bonding and speed up the process, I will be using these tension clamps to hold the frame together. You just want to place one of the tension clamps on each end and make any adjustments. Now once all your adjustments to your pieces are made, just go ahead and tighten that clamp as tight as it'll go. So while this is held in place, we're going to drill some pilot holes for screws to make this super sturdy. Now you want to add a pilot hole on the outside edge where each of the short pieces cross. So you'll have 3 pilot holes on each side. And then we're going to add our wood screws, and I will be using some number 8 2.5 inch screws. I'm going to start adding them by hand screwing them into place, and then I'm going to drill it all the way in until it's nice and flush. And then repeat this for the rest of your pilot holes. Now once they are all added, you can go ahead and remove your clamps, and everything is nice and secure. So now you want to go ahead and take your frame, flip it over, and grab those paint sticks. Now we're going to lay those paint sticks across that bottom section nice and evenly. Now 10 sticks should cover the entire section. Now to adhere these, I'll be using my hot glue gun and the Sure Bonder wood glue sticks. Now you just want to apply some of that glue to the frame for the first stick, and once that's applied, you want to go ahead and place that stick on nice and even. You want to make sure that this stick is nice and straight. Then for every stick afterwards, just apply glue to the top and bottom of the stick and apply it snug against the previous one. You do want to make sure that there's no gaps in between them when applying them. And here are all of the sticks secured into place. So now we can take that wider piece, and we'll be applying this as the shelf. So we want to align this with that top edge of that bottom piece of the frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the top edge of the shelf on the frame's sides. And then I'm going to flip the frame over, and I want to draw a line with a ruler, and I'm going to transfer that mark for that top edge we just made to the back, so we'll know where the top edge of our frame is on the back, and we're going to use that as a guide. So now you can apply a generous amount of hot glue to the shelf's edge, and we want to carefully apply it to the front piece aligned with that top edge of the frame's bottom. Now you do want to let this completely dry. Now once it is dry, go ahead and flip the piece over, and you do want to grab something to kind of support it because it will be a little higher than the other side. Now we're going to be applying 3 pilot holes across the back of the shelf using the pencil marking as a guide. Then to secure our piece, we'll be using 3 number 6 1 3/4 inch wood screws. And here they are all in place. So now that that's all done, we can go ahead and paint our piece, and we will be using this white chalk paint, but you can use any kind of paint that you like. Now you just want to apply one nice coat of that chalk paint all over the frame, and you want to be sure that you get the inside and outside edges and cover up those screws as well. Now you do want to make sure that you get all the crevices of the corners of the shelf area as well as underneath that shelf. And then once your piece is all painted, we just let this sit to dry. Now while this is drying, we can go ahead and prepare our skewers. Now we'll only need 4 for each of the shelves, so I'll be painting all 8 of mine at once, and I'll be using this black acrylic paint to paint these. Now you just want to apply a generous coat of that acrylic paint to each one of the skewers. Now once they're dry, here are all of our skewers ready to use. So now back to the wall piece is dry, we can go ahead and add a bit of aging to the frame, and we're going to use a dark brown acrylic paint. And with a fine tip brush, I'm just going to randomly apply some markings to the edges and the corners to give it a little bit of a chipped and rustic look. And here is our piece after adding all the markings. You can add as many or as little as you like. Now once that is dry, we can start to add our accent design to the open center. Now, so the first thing we're going to do is we need to mark the center on each side of the frame. So after measuring, it ended up being at 8.5 inches on my piece. Now go ahead and grab one of those skewers, and we're going to cut a piece to fit that opening with a pair of wire clippers. And once it looks like it has a nice fit, we're just going to hot glue that skewer into place along those center marks that we made. Now on the top half, we're going to be cutting 2 pieces, forming an X in that space. And then we're just going to hot glue 1 cross at a time. Now for that piece that crosses over, you kind of want to lightly bend it so it curves over the first piece. Bamboo is really flexible, so this shouldn't be a problem. And then we're going to repeat this for the bottom opening. So once both of these are done, we can start to add our smaller accent pieces. And for the top section, we'll add a small piece to the right of each one of the X pieces. Now we just want to hot glue them into place, and we want to make sure that the edge of the stick is even with the other one in that center area. We don't want them to overlap and stick out. We kind of want them to be even. Now for the next one, we're just going to follow that same pattern. And once they're in place, you just kind of want to make sure that they're all being applied at an even distance, about 2 inches apart. And then we're just going to repeat this process for the next 2 sides of the X. Now once the first section is done, we're just going to mirror this pattern in the second section. And then we're going to follow up with extra hot glue at all of those contact points. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add some of that black acrylic paint to all of those skewers ends that are exposed on those cut ends, and also on the hot glue to all blend it in. Now when the acrylic paint is added to the hot glue, it actually looks like welding, which looks pretty cool. It has a pretty cool look on the piece. And here is our completed design. Now all you need to do now is to add a picture hanger on the back. Now by now the stained wood should be all dry, and you can assemble your second shelf. But the first thing we need to do is cut down those paint sticks just like we did before. And now everything is ready to assemble. And through the magic of video, here is the fully assembled piece in a stained version. I think that this turned out gorgeous, and now all we have to do is hang and decorate. And here are the 2 versions that we created. Now I think the left one has a sophisticated modern boho type of feel with natural wood, and the other one on the right has a sweet farmhouse look that is super cute and has a bright and welcoming appeal. Now I love that you can use the same design to make 2 completely different looks. Now you all have to let me know which version is your favorite today. Now for this project, we'll need 2 of the 1x2 by 8 feet long wood pieces from the Home Depot for $1.18 each. And here is a cut piece just to show you how it looks. We'll also need 2 of these Dollar Tree trash cans from the Dollar Tree, or you can use this gutter guard screen from the Home Depot. We'll also need some of these long bamboo skewers from the Dollar Tree. Now the first thing we're going to do is to cut the wood down to size. We'll need 4 pieces that are going to be 22 inches and 4 pieces that are going to be cut at 8 inches. Now if you don't have a means to cut the wood, the Home Depot will do this for you at no charge. So I will be assembling the frame using 2 pieces of each size, and we want to sandwich the shorter pieces in between those 2 longer pieces. Now I will be using this wood glue from the Dollar Tree to initially secure these together. You want to apply that wood glue to each end of those shorter pieces and then press them together. Now if you have some tension clamps, just apply them snug on each end and this will help with the bonding. And then repeat this for the other frame. Now after letting this dry for about a half an hour, we're going to add some screws to our frame to make it nice and sturdy, and I will be using a 3/32 size drill bit to drill a pilot hole into each corner. Now an alternate option is to use a staple gun on the back seams of the corners as well if it's more convenient for you. Now I will also be using these 1 3/4 wood screws to apply into each one of those corners of the frame. Now I'm just going to start to hand thread it and then screw it all the way into place. Now here are all 4 corners completed on our frame. Now I will be painting my frame with 1 coat of some white acrylic paint, but you can choose any color that you like or even stain it if you like. Now you want to apply the paint all over the front and the inner and outer edges of that frame. And then just paint the other frame as well. And then next we can go ahead and paint those skewers. Now we will need 4 skewers for each frame. Now I will be using that same white acrylic paint and I'll be applying 1 coat to the skewers. Now if you can't find the skewers, you can also use thin dowels as well, and you can usually get them 2 or 3 for $1. Now once those skewers are nice and dry, we're going to grab 2 of them and bond them together. Now we're going to bond them together on one side with hot glue, and we're just going to run hot glue down the seam. We're going to do this for 2 sets for each frame. So now that our frame is dry, we can add those skewer sets. Now to make sure that they're placed even, I'm just going to go ahead and mark the centers of all of the sides. And then I'm going to measure the inside of the long side, taking that 19-inch measurement and dividing it into 3, and that measurement is about 6 1/3. So I am marking this measurement on both ends and along the bottom as well. So now we can take our skewer, and I'm going to cut 2 pieces to fit across the front of the frame. And then I'm going to add a generous amount of that hot glue and apply it to both pieces right on those marks that we made. And then we're going to grab that second skewer set and we're going to cut it down to fit down the center of our frames. Now once it's nice and cut, you want to hot glue it in place and add some clips to hold it until it's dry. Now for good measure, just add a little bit of extra hot glue to the sides of the skewers to lock them into place. And here is everything all set and dry. So now all we do is take our other frame, we want to sit it right on top, and we can just transfer those markings to the frame. And then we just apply the other skewers the same way as we did the first. Now for the screen, you can use this Dollar Tree wastebasket by cutting off the bottom rim and stretching it out, and also cutting off that top rim. Now I've done this before with this gather sign and it turned out great, and I'll link the tutorial for this DIY in the upper right hand corner of this video and in the description box below. Now I'm going to use this gutter guard screen for this project. This is really thick plastic screen that is so much fun to craft with. You just want to lay out that screen on half of the frame, and you want to cut a length to fit. Now once it's nice and cut, you just want to check to make sure that everything is covered and there are no gaps. Now we're going to end up cutting a total of 4 pieces. So now I'm going to measure and trim that screen down to size so it meets at that center seam. You want to make sure it doesn't overlap the edges as well. And then just trim your remaining pieces. Now I will be painting one side of this screen with this brilliant aluminum spray paint by Krylon, and I want to let it dry completely. Now once it's dry, we can apply it to the frame. I just want to place that painted side down, and I want to align it along that center skewer, and then apply some hot glue down that center skewer just to hold it in place. Then just go ahead and staple that screen all the way around the frame. Then repeat this on the other side. And here is the screen all in place. Now I wanted to distress the frame a bit, so I'm sanding off some of that acrylic paint around the inner and outer edges of the frame, and also a bit on the skewers. Now I wanted to age it a bit, so I'm scratching it up with a screwdriver several times and also nicking it with a hammer claw as well. Now to bring out that wood grain that we sanded, I'm just going to apply a bit of this stain in those sanded areas. Now you can also use acrylic paint or antiquing wax as well. Now you just want to do this for both of your frames. Now to hang the frames, you can use one of these picture hanging hooks from the Dollar Tree, but I only have one on hand, so I'm just going to use this jute twine that I tied a knot in each end. I want to apply that jute twine to the top center, and then I want to apply a staple right above each knot. And now that we have that in place, we can start on our wreath. Now for each wreath, we'll need 4 lamb ear stems, we'll need an 8-inch wreath form, some wire, we'll need 3 clipped pumpkins, we'll need some berry clusters, and some small pine cones. So I'm going to clip that wire into pieces about 4 inches long to be working with. Now I want to start by applying that lamb's ear around the wreath form, and I'm just going to bend it to fit that wreath form shape. And then I'll just want to layer 4 of the stems around, and I want to wire them into place as I go. Now you definitely can use hot glue for this, but I plan on reusing these things, so wire makes it easy to detach them and reuse them again. Now once that lamb's ear is done, we can start to add our berry bunches. So I'm just going to add some wire around each one of the berry bunches and twist it up, and then I can add those to my wreath. And now that all those berries are added, we can add our pumpkins, and I love that these have the little clip on the back, so that makes them easy to position. And then for a final touch, we can add some pine cones. Now I already added wire to these, so all I really have to do is attach those to the wreath. And here is our wreath ready to go. And all we need is a second one for the second frame. Now to attach these, all I'm going to do is just grab some ribbon. I got this buffalo check ribbon. And what I want to do is I want to run it through that outer ring of the wreath. I want to loop it right through there. And then I just want to take that wreath and I want to center it on the frame. Now once it's nice and center, or where you desire it to be placed, all I'm going to do to secure it is I am just going to take my staple gun and apply one staple. And that's it. You can finish the other wreath and you're ready to display these. And now just hang these however you like and enjoy these beautiful windows. Oh my goodness, I really love how these turned out. Now I really think these turned out amazing, and I love the accent screen in these. And you know what? The distressing is not overdone, but it's just enough to give it that weather look, and I really love that. Now I love the neutral wreaths, but you can choose any color combination you like. You can keep these frames up all year round and add decorations for each holiday. You guys have to let me know how you would decorate these windows in the comments. Now for one shelf, we will need one 1x2 piece of wood, and you can purchase this at the Home Depot in 8-foot lengths for about $1.54, but just be sure to check your local area's pricing. Now we will also need a 1x4, and this is also sold in 8-foot lengths at the Home Depot, and these are around $2.98 each, and for each shelf we only need half of this board. Now for each shelf, we will need 2 packs of these 1-gallon paint stir sticks, and these are 98 cents each. Now I have 4 here since I'll be making 2 shelves. Now there's a couple ways you can assemble the corners of your shelf. Now you can butt them up in a 90-degree angle with straight edges here, and that is the easiest way. But you can also choose to cut miter corners at a 45-degree angle, and I think this gives it a higher end look, and you can also do this as well. Now to manually cut your miter corners, you can use a miter box. Now these are easy to find at most home improvement stores, and they cut straight and angled corners. Now in your home improvement store, they're really fairly expensive. You'll get your saw and you will get your box, and these will range about $10 to $11. Now I cut all of my pieces with my electric miter saw. I have an Hitachi miter saw that cuts straight, beveled, and mitered corners. I've had this for about 10 years. It's $99, and actually it is still $99 under the Metabo brand, and I have it linked in the description box. Now you could also reach out to your handy wood cutting section at your home improvement store to cut all of your straight cuts as well. Now for the straight cuts, you will need 2 long pieces at 34 inches. And you'll need 2 shorter pieces at 8 inches. Now if you're mitering at your corners, you will need 2 pieces, and they will also be 34 inches. And then your shorter pieces will be 11 inches. Now for your 4 shelves, you will need to cut 4 of them from your 1x4 at 11 inches. Now for your paint sticks, to prep these, we're just going to cut off the handle portion of the paint sticks, and they will end up being 9 inches long, and that is perfect for the size of our shelf. So we're going to start off with that mitered cornered rack, and what we're going to do is gather up our long pieces, our shelf pieces, 20 of our paint sticks, and our mitered little end pieces. And I'm going to stain these with my Minwax Jacobian stain. Now to stain these is really fairly simple. You're just going to take a cloth, and I'm going to cover the entire piece with the stain. Now this will include the top, the bottom, and the sides. You just want to apply one generous layer of that stain. Make sure you get those end pieces as well because they will be showing in your final project. So this is what one of your pieces will look like fully stained. Now you're just going to repeat this for your other shelf pieces until they're all fully stained. So now we're going to move on to the longer pieces. Now we're going to stain just the sides and the fronts of these, and you don't want to stain the back or the end pieces where they'll be joined because we don't want that stain to get in the way. We're going to stain those end pieces the same way, leaving those corners unstained. And then finally, we're going to paint or stain our paint sticks as well. We're going to stain the side that does not have the number markings. Now we're just going to let these sit to dry. So while those dry, we're going to work on our second shelf, and we're going to be using all of the straight cut pieces for this assembly. So I'm going to start by using my grid mat to lay out all my pieces. Now to lay out all your pieces is fairly easy. We're just going to space them equally apart and place that centerpiece in place. Now you'll use this same guideline to assemble your stained pieces when they're dry, so just make a note of that. Now in order to join the pieces, I am going to be using my Surebonder wood stick hot glue. Now I'm only using this wood stick hot glue to temporarily join the pieces together while I work. Now you certainly can use wood glue, but keep in mind it does take a couple of hours for it to cure, and we will be following up with screws, so no worries, this will be a very secure rack. Now we're going to repeat both sides by adding that Surebonder wood stick hot glue on that short piece, joining it to the two sides as shown here. Now once that's done, I mentioned we are going to use screws, so we're going to start by drilling a pilot hole in the side of our rack. And you definitely don't want to skip this step. Drilling a pilot hole will ensure that your wood does not split when adding all of your screws, and just repeat this for all 4 of your corners. Now once you have all of your pilot holes drilled, you're going to use some screws to secure them in place. And for this project, I decided to go with some 2.5 inch number 8 wood screws for this project. Now I'm just going to start by hand threading that screw in a couple of times and then using my drill to go ahead and screw it all the way into place. And once that corner is done, just repeat this for all 4 of your corners. And now all of your corners have their screws in place, and we have a nice, solid, sturdy frame. So now what we're going to do is add our paint stick pieces. So we want to flip the frame around until we are have the good side down and the back side facing you. And we're going to end up laying these paint sticks across the back, overlapping. Now that opening is 8 inches, so 9 inches is long enough. Now in order to space these, I am using one of those Dollar Tree craft sticks to space it, and I'm going to just be applying those paint sticks along the back using that craft stick as a spacer. Now that spacer is about 1/2 inch, so you just want to make sure that you use that and make sure all of your slats are going to be even. So as you add each one of your slats with your hot glue on each end, you just want to make sure you shift your spacer down as well, just to make sure everything is nice and neat. Now you're just going to repeat this process all the way down until the frame has all of the slats in place, and you can see how neat and even this looks. So now what we're going to do is work on applying our shelves to our frame. Now we're going to determine the placement. So I'm taking my tape measure, and what I decided to go with is 8 inches. So I'm going to mark the first mark at 8 inches, the next one at 16 inches, the third one at 24 inches, and the last one at 32 inches. Now you want to do this on each side of the front of your frame. So here are our markings all on the front of our frame, and this is where the bottom of the shelf will sit. It'll sit right on top of this marking. So what I want to do now is drill pilot holes. I'm going to drill a pilot hole right on top of that line in the center where the board will be laying across, and this will just help as a guide when we start to place them on our rack. And once all your pilot holes are drilled, I'm just testing out the placement and it looks good. So I'm adding some more of that Surebonder wood stick hot glue on top of the frame, right on top of that pilot hole, laying it evenly across, making sure it's lined up with the lines. You just want to press and hold it until it secures into place, and repeat this all the way down for all 4 of your shelves. So now that 4 of your shelves are secured with the hot glue, we are going to add screws to the back to make sure they're nice and secure. So go ahead and flip it down, and I'm taking my drill and I'm just drilling right back through that pilot hole we drilled, just to make sure we have a pilot hole going into the shelf this time. Now to secure the shelves in place, we will be using some 2-inch number 8 wood screws. So I'm going to add 1 wood screw into each one of those pilot holes and just keep an eyeball on them to make sure that screw is going directly into the wood piece on the shelf. And now all of our shelves are nice and secure into place. Now in order to secure those slats a little better, I went back and added a staple into each one of those paint stick slats across the back. It's not really necessary, but I really love my pieces to be super secure. So now I am going to paint my piece. Now it does look awesome natural, but I am going to paint this with some white chalk paint. Now all I'm going to do is to add 1 to 2 nice coats of this chalk paint. It's up to you. I really wanted my rack to have a kind of weather distressed look, so it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but you're going to apply this to the entire rack, and when it's applied, you want to let it completely dry. So now that it is dry to touch, we can actually continue work on our distressing part of the project. Now I just wanted to do some light distressing, so I'm taking some of this chocolate brown color acrylic paint, and what I'm going to do is take a fine paintbrush, and I'm just going to add some manual lines and chipping looks around the edge. I just wanted to make it look like some of the bare wood was showing through there, emphasizing it on the corners and some of those slats in the middle. It's all up to you how you want to apply this, and that's the wonderful thing about distressing, because it's really random and it does not have to be perfect. You just do it to your heart's content. So here is what my light distressing looks like on my rack. So once that's done, we're going to go ahead and flip it over, and we're going to add some hangers to it. Now I actually really love these D-style hangers here. I got these from Amazon. I will link these in the description box. I think they do a great job of supporting heavier projects, and they're really inexpensive. So I'm going to take one and I'm going to add it to the upper corner on the back and mark the holes with a pencil. Now the screws we use with this are very small, so you can just drill the slightest little pilot hole if you want to, but actually you really don't even have to do that since the screws are small, but I was just taking some precautions. And then I'm just going to manually screw that screw in with a screwdriver. And then repeat this on the other side until both of your hangers are in place. So now that that's done, you can decorate. So here is the distressed white shelf decorated for my space, and I love how this turned out. Now I think that this would be perfect for a farmhouse style theme, and I've chosen some of my favorite decor pieces to add. Now these shelves have plenty of room for your different types of decor, and I love how sturdy it is. Now, if you're more into arts and crafts, this shelf would be great to display your supplies too. I love that these shelves hold heavier containers without a problem, and you can see all of the labels easily. Now this makes it super easy to grab and go, and also adds a little punch of color to your space. So now that we finished that one, we're ready to go on to our stained shelf, and all of our pieces are now dried. We have our long pieces, our wood paint sticks, our end pieces, and we have our shelves. Now we're going to assemble this the same way we did as the white shelf. And so through the magic of video, we have a completed shelf. Now I really love this Jacobian stain. It really does wonders on very cheap cuts of wood, and it turned out amazing. Now this is the shelf that we chose to do those mitered corners on, and this is what they look like, and I just think it really gives it a higher end look. And now we can decorate this piece. And here we have it, and I decided to go with kind of a modern boho look for this shelf, and I absolutely love it. Now I'm a huge fan of all of these natural textures, and the beautiful tone of the wood stain really enhances this look. Now you can add all of your own special touches that make this unique, and the possibilities on how to decorate this shelf are limitless. And of course, using this in the bathroom would be a wonderful idea as well. Now I really love how clean this looks with the black and white, and the touches of greenery really give it a spa-like feel. Now this will be perfect for extra washcloths, or you can even add some folded towels. Everybody needs those extra rolls of TP, and the other little odds and ends in jars are always helpful too. Now these are just a few ideas I wanted to share, but I would love to know, how would you use this shelf in your space? Let me know in the comments below. Now here is my inspiration for this project today. Now I really love this design, and there are so many ways that you could customize and style it to fit your particular taste. Now the $149 cost was a bit off-putting, but I knew that with a few cuts of wood and some Dollar Tree supplies, I would be able to recreate this look at a fraction of that retail cost. Now for this project, we are going to need 2 of these 1x2 pieces of wood from the Home Depot. Now these come in lengths of 8 feet and are very inexpensive at only $1.54 each. We're also going to need 2 packages of these 32-inch skewers, and these are from the Dollar Tree. Now, if you can't find them at the Dollar Tree, they're also sold at Walmart under the Ozark Trail brand, and they're only 88 cents a pack. Now, we're going to start by having our wood cut, and we're going to cut 4 pieces at 32 inches, and we're also going to cut 4 pieces at 9 inches. Now I cut my pieces with straight ends so they butt together as shown here. Now if you prefer to have your pieces at miter corners at 45 degrees as shown here, you can do that as well if you have a miter saw or a miter box. Now if you do decide to go this method, still cut the long pieces at 32 inches, but your short pieces need to be 12 inches. Now we're going to start by staining our pieces, and in order to match my inspiration, I'm going to be using some early American stain. Now what you want to do is to stain the side, the top, and you want to make sure you apply a nice good coat to both sides and the top of your pieces. Now you don't want to stain the ends of your shorter pieces because those would be bonded to the other wood pieces. Now once those are all stained, you want to go forward and stain all your longer pieces, again staining the sides and the top, and also you do want to stain the ends of these pieces because they will be showing in this project if you decide to do these square straight corners. Now once they're all stained, set them out to dry for a few hours. Now while those dry, we're going to work on our skewer pieces, so I opened both packages here. Now what I'm going to do is I like to have a double skewer for thickness, so in order to bond them together, I'm just going to take 2 and I'm going to run some glue right down the seam of 2 of the skewers. Now to hold this in place while they're gluing, I'm just going to use some of these Dollar Tree clips that I got from the Crafter Square at Dollar Tree, and I'm going to apply a line of glue and clip it all the way down. Now once it's all glued and it's all in place, it only takes about 10 seconds to glue, so you can remove those clips and then move on to the next one. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do 8 sets of these 2-pack skewers. Now we want to have 8 sets of these. Now I will be painting these with some black acrylic paint, but go ahead and grab 6 single skewers as well because we'll be using those in our project. So you just want to apply that black acrylic paint along the unglued side of the skewer and along the sides. Now once that nice good single or double coat is done, you just want to lay it out on an elevated piece of paper and then continue that for the remainder of your double skewers. Now once your double skewers are all painted, you want to paint your single skewers as well on all sides. You want to lay those out as well and let those sit to completely dry. So by this time, your wood should be nice and dry. So we're going to separate 2 shorter pieces and 2 longer pieces. Now we're just going to lay out the 2 longer pieces horizontally, and we're going to nestle that shorter piece in between each end. Now in order to temporarily bond these, I am going to use my wood stick hot glue for this. Now you can also use wood glue if you like, but just keep in mind it does take a few hours for wood glue to glue. So I'm using my wood stick hot glue to glue the shorter pieces at each end because it's quick and easy, and we will be screwing these in later. So there's no need to worry about the stability of the frame. Now once both of those short pieces are bonded to the end pieces, just go ahead and flip it around, and now we can add that other long piece to the other side of our short pieces, and this will create our frame. Just add some more of that Surebonder wood stick hot glue to the end and just press it into place on both sides. And remember, just wipe away any of that hot glue that oozes out of the seams. Now I did mention I'll be screwing these together, so I will be using some 2-inch wood screws for this. Now this screw box was put together by myself by Individual Packages, and I got the box from Walmart from the fishing section, just in case you wanted to know. Now before I add my screws, I always love to drill pilot holes, and this will create a method to apply your screw so your wood does not split, and you want to apply a pilot hole in each of the 4 corners. And once that pilot hole is drilled, just go ahead and start hand threading that screw into place, and then take your drill to drill it all the way down into the side. Now you do want to repeat this for all 4 corners as well. Now once all your screws are in place, you can go in and dab some acrylic paint on top of them to match the wood grain if you like. So now that your frame is all sturdy and ready to go, what we're going to do is we're going to start adding measurements. So we want to flip it over to the back, grab your tape measure, and you want to find the center of the back, which should be about 14.5 inches. And then take that 14.5 inches and divide it in half at 7.25 inches, and you want to do this on each side. Now this will identify where we're going to place the 3 double skewers that we'll lay across the center. And then I'm just going to follow up with a Sharpie to highlight my marks so I'll know their placement. And then just repeat this on the other side of the frame to make sure that they're nice and even on each side. Now you can also measure the center of the top and bottom as well, and you can use this as a guide when you add your centerpiece. Now this is completely optional, so since you will not be adding an actual skewer to that mark, but you can use it as a visual guideline. Now once all your marks are made, go ahead and grab one of your double skewers, and all you want to do is you want to lay it across your first 2 marks at the top, and you want to cut a piece where it overlaps the ends about 1/4 inch as shown here. Now once that piece is cut, go ahead and add a generous amount of that wood stick hot glue and press that skewer face down, good side down, into place. And then you just want to repeat by cutting 2 more pieces to line up with the remaining 2 marks as shown here. Now you want to make sure that these are all nice and hot glued into place, and then follow up with a staple gun, and this is just for added security. Just add a few staples on the end of each one of those skewer pieces to make sure they are nice and secure. So now what you want to do is flip it over, and you want to grab another one of those double skewers, and you want to cut a piece to go across the center where it overlaps all three of those skewers by about 1/4 of an inch on each end. Now you do want to lay this skewer right in the center. Now it's a good idea to go ahead and double check to make sure it is nice and centered between the two skewers. And then just add hot glue under the outside, middle, and end skewers, and while it's still warm, go ahead and remeasure again just in case you need to make some slight adjustments. And now that center skewer is all into place. So now what you want to do is take your single skewers, and we're going to add them as the interior outline of the frame. Now what we're going to do is cut a piece to size to fit along that long edge. You want to add a dot of hot glue on the top edge of each one of those center skewers and place one of those single skewers right on top along the edge of the inside of the frame. And then add a dot of hot glue in the corner at each end as well. No worries, we are going to follow up with hot glue on the back to make sure they're super secure, but this is just to hold them in place while we are working. Now once that side is done, repeat that on the other side of the frame as well. Now once both of the long sides are done, take that second skewer and then we're going to cut that one to fit in the top edge of the bottom, and we're just going to lay that on top of the two side skewers that we placed, placing hot glue on each side and pressing that into place as well. And once that's nice and secure, you want to repeat that for the bottom end as well. So now the entire inside of your frame is nice and outlined. So like I mentioned before, we are going to add some double security to that outline. So all we're going to do is run a bead of glue between that skewer and the frame and press it firmly to the side of the frame for about 10 seconds until it is nice and secure. We're going to repeat this all the way around the frame. So now that interior outline is nice and firm and insecure. So now we're going to work on our diamond shape on each one of the open ends. So what we're going to do first is we're going to mark our measurements. We're going to mark the center of each of the open squares. We're going to mark the top and the bottom. And then we're going to mark the center on the side. Now you can transfer that marking from the back too if you like. So now that the centers of each side are marked, we can start applying our squares. So take one of those double skewers and we want to line up the angle of the diamond with the top edge touching one mark and the bottom edge touching the center mark. Now once we have that general piece, we're going to cut it about an inch, about 1/4 of an inch longer than normal, and then make 4 pieces that long. That way we have room to play with in case we need to make adjustments. So now that we have our pieces, you just want to cut them down to size, just trimming off as needed. Apply hot glue on each one of those skewers on the trim and the middle and press it into place at that angle. And for the next side, we're going to repeat that again, trimming it down to size, making sure that that piece will fit, and apply hot glue right on top of our previous piece and on the side piece. So now all we have to do is the bottom piece, again making sure that piece fits nice and snug, and place some hot glue on that corner and at the middle of the pane, and then apply that last piece in place the same way. And now one of our diamonds is totally complete, and now we just repeat this on the other side. Now here are both of my diamonds all into place. So we're going to flip it over to the back and add additional hot glue at that junction where those pieces come into contact, because we want to make sure that this is very secure and in place. And now I'm just taking my Dollar Tree broom, and you want to wisp away all of those hot glue webs. Now while we are working, it's not unusual for the wood to actually show through some of those skewers on places we missed. So we're going to go through and touch up all of the wood pieces where the paint is actually not as thick as we'd like it, and we cut those raw edges of the bamboo. So we do want to cover up the ends of those bamboo cuts as well, so they won't show in our project. And then we're just going to let this completely dry. Now once it is dry, you just grab your other 2 sets of pieces for wood and make a second window pane. Now once both of our window panes are done, we are going to add some jute string at the top to hang it, and all I have is some jute string with knots tied on each end. I'm going to take my staple gun and apply 2 staples at each end right before that knot, and this will create a hang loop, and you can also put a hang loop on the long side as well. And check out the finished window panels all hung up and on display. Now I absolutely love how these turned out. Now I think that the wood turned out beautiful in these window panels, and the skewers were the perfect Dollar Tree item to make these iron metal accents. And this project came together so easy, and not to mention saves you a ton of money. Now these also have so much versatility, and you can display them in a variety of different ways. Now one of my favorite ways to display them is horizontally, and I think this adds a great display for those empty, big wall spaces. Now you could even add glass or even Dollar Tree mirrors to the back, or paint them white for a farmhouse look. And how about adding a plant hook to the top to display your succulents and your greenery? There are so many possibilities with these window panels, and you all have to let me know, how would you decorate these in your space? So for this project, we'll need a package of these long bamboo skewers from the Dollar Tree, or you can use small dowels. We'll need one of these 1x2x8 pieces of wood from the Home Depot for $1.18, and we'll also need 1 piece of wood that is about 4 to 5 inches wide. Now the first thing we're going to do is cut the wood down to size. Now I cut my pieces with a mitered edge, but you can certainly cut them straight if you like. Now the first 2 pieces are going to be cut at 25 inches. Now this scrap piece will also be cut at 25 inches as well. Now the 2 pieces at the end will be cut at 20 inches. Now I'm going to start by laying out my Surebonder silicone mat, and I will be using these wood glue sticks for this project. Now just go ahead and grab one of the shorter and the longer sticks, and we want to go ahead and match up those corners. And then apply some of that hot glue to the cut end, and we want to press them tightly together until they're bonded. And then grab your second short stick, and what we're going to do is we're going to bond that to the other end of the long stick. And then finally, we're going to add that last long stick on the open end. And here are all 4 ends bonded together. Now I will be adding screws to my frame, so I'm going to drill pilot holes into each side corner of the frame. Now you want to drill approximately 3/4 inches down from each of the corners. Now for this project, I will be using 4 of the number 8 2-inch screws. Now I'm just going to start by hand threading the screw in and then finish off installing it with my drill. Now we're going to repeat this for all 4 corners, and here they are, all nice and secure, and the screws should be flush with the wood. Now on our frame, we'll be adding the other piece of wood as a shelf ledge to the bottom, and we want that ledge piece to be even with the opening of the frame. So once you have your placement in mind, we're going to go ahead and add some of that wood glue to the edge of that board. And then just press it into place until it bonds. Now once it is bonded, go ahead and flip the frame over, and we're going to be applying screws to secure that shelf ledge in place. Now once again, we want to drill about 4 pilot holes along the ledge, and we want to make sure that we're drilling through the center of the shelf ledge piece. And then we're going to start applying those 2-inch screws into place. So now that everything is secure, we can move on to painting our piece. Now, you can stain as well, but I suggest you do that before assembling your piece to avoid any glue splotches. Now, I will be using this white chalk paint for this project. Now, what you want to do is just apply one nice coat to the entire frame and including that shelf ledge. And then just set this to the side to completely dry. So now we can work on our skewers. Now, if you can't find these at the Dollar Tree, you can also find them in the camping section at Walmart for 88 cents, or you can just use small dowels. Now, what we want to do is adhere 2 of the skewers together by applying hot glue down the center, and we're going to add clips as you go to keep it in place. And then once you complete your first stick, just repeat this for the remaining sticks. Now, I only ended up using 4 sets and not 6 sets, so you won't have as many to make as I did here. So once the skewers are all bonded together, we can paint them, and I will be using this chalk paint again. Now, you just want to apply a coat to the unglued side, and you want to allow these to completely dry. And here are all of our skewers. So now what we want to do is just go ahead and grab your frame, and what we're going to do is place the skewer face down, and we're going to start to adhere the skewers to the back of the frame. Now, this first skewer will be laid diagonally from corner to corner, and then we just want to trim off any overlapping excess and use some of that hot glue to secure it to each corner. And then we're going to take that second skewer, we're going to trim it down as well, and then cross it over the first skewer and secure it in each corner with hot glue. Now, I know this part is kind of hard to see, but here I'm just marking the center of each side of the frame for the placement of the next skewers. So I'm going to go ahead and take that next skewer, and I'm just going to cut it in half. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to line this skewer up with the center marks on the top and the side of the frame that we just made, and once that's in place, just go ahead and secure it with hot glue. And then we're just going to repeat this process on the other 3 sides of the frame, matching up those center marks. And here are all of our skewers in place. Now, for a little bit of added security, I'm just going to take the staple gun, and I want to add a staple over the end of each one of those skewers. And now your skewer design is completely assembled. Now, to hang this piece, you can add 2 of these sawtooth picture hangers to the back of the frame, and these just can be applied by hammering them in. Now, before we do that, I wanted to add a little bit of an age look to my frame, so I'm going to use some of this dark brown acrylic paint for an accent. Now, I'm just going to take a fine paintbrush, and I want to start making random markings on the edge of those skewers, and also I want to make some on the edge of the frame. Now, I like to use the side of the brush to do this. It adds a little bit more control. And here is our frame with all of our distress markings. And don't forget to add some to the shelf as well. You knew I couldn't forget the holiday trucks. Now, this shelf is the perfect size to showcase all of your farmhouse truck goodies. And then when the holidays are over, switch these over to a neutral theme for a year-round decor display. Listen, I hope you all enjoyed seeing these creations again, or for some of you, for the very first time. I hope that you're all inspired to create your own home decor using wood furring strips as well. Now, if you love DIYs on a budget, please give this video a thumbs up and share this video with your friends. Make sure that you're following She's So Crafty EE on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest for the latest news, sneak peeks, and giveaways. Now, if you like videos like these and you don't want to miss the next one, make sure you're subscribed by clicking that subscribe button below, or just click on my She's So Crafty logo on your screen and then click on the bell. It's absolutely free. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.